Okay, I'm gonna do one more. This is gonna be another politics, and I'm gonna try to keep it short because we're all sick of it. We're all fucking fed up. I want to say I'm not, because I review my videos when I post them. So I want to say I'm not trying to talk shit to liberals. And try to encourage people necessarily one way or the other. It's just more about me sharing where I'm coming from. And I kind of talked about this in some other videos where I feel like the more we all just kind of share each other's viewpoints and stuff, the more overall general understanding I think people can have if we all are kind of listening to each other, you know. Whether it's out in the real world or online or whatever. You know, trying to understand where another person's viewpoint is coming from. So I know I'm kind of railing on the liberal thing and in these political videos, and I don't really mean to do that necessarily. It's because, like I said, like I have friends that are liberal, and I do understand, you know, the liberal thing, you know. I just like I said, that's why I brought up the Malcolm X quote and stuff. Like I agree with Malcolm X that the liberals are more dangerous to the disenfranchised than the conservatives. I do also agree with Malcolm X though that you know, both the conservative and the liberal will fucking cannibalize the disenfranchised. Like, you know, technically speaking, I agree with Malcolm X. Technically speaking, the liberals are more dangerous than the conservatives. So, but really, at the end of the day, it's kind of like, well, they're both cannibals. They're both there to cannibalize the disenfranchised, you know. And so, you know, I even do understand the apolitical, you know, too, where it's like, well, if they're both going to cannibalize, then why even get involved in politics? So it isn't that I don't understand these things. You know, and so I don't mean to try to, you know, sway anyone's view on these things, you know. Who's to say what's right and all this? I'm not me. Not me. I don't usually vote. Most of the time I don't vote. You know, if I happen to be able to vote where it's like convenient, I might or I might not, you know, I don't know. And you know, it just like whatever. It's still kind of a big whatever thing. But I just wanted to clarify, I'm not trying to rail on liberals per se. You know, I mean I could go into all this stuff and you know, but it's just we're really ultimately we're just in a really fucking bizarre era, man, like, and which is a good thing in a way. I mean, we're lucky to be experiencing all this insane shit going on in the world, you know. I mean in a sense, you know, you can look at it as the glass half full or the glass half empty, whatever. And you know, I mean, yeah, sure, there's a lot of different ways to look at it. I do genuinely feel, though, you know, that we're lucky, in a sense, to be witnessing all this fucking insane shit going on in the world. It's like, what the fuck? You know? What's next, man? Is the sky gonna open up and fucking Anunnaki gonna just be like in the movies, dragons coming out of the water, out of the ocean and shit? What's next? You know, I don't know. Wouldn't that be kind of cool in a way? I mean, it'd be really scary and probably miserable, like if seven-headed dragons started coming out and fucking, you know, whatever, all this crazy shit. But at the same time, it'd be like, what? You know, it'd be like, what the fuck? So anyway, I don't know. I mean, imagine living in this world. Let's say like tomorrow, a seven-headed dragon, a giant seven-headed dragon the size of the fucking Twin Towers, fucking emerged out of the fucking ocean. You know, I mean, what the fuck, right? It would be interesting, if nothing else. So in that sense, we live in interesting times. I mean, you look at all this stuff going on, and I will go through periods, like downtime because of my job, and like I was explaining earlier about my job and just the nature, circumstances of my life. I go through periods where I have a lot of time where I can just kind of observe what's the fucking news? What are they talking about in the news? Like, what is this insane shit that supposedly is going on in the world? Like, what? And there's a lot. Well, let's go down just the list. You got P. Diddy. That's totally insane. You got all this shit with Israel and Pakistan and fucking Iran and Lebanon, and that's totally insane. How much of this is true, I don't know. But I mean, it's all going. You got all this scandal with these politicians. Trump is, alleged assassination attempts, and it's all happening like one thing after another, after another, after another. The hurricanes, Helena, fucking devastating North Carolina and fucking Florida and Georgia, and that big chlorine plant in Georgia that fucking exploded, and I mean, it never ends. I mean, this is all this shit I'm just talking about. This is all just within the last few weeks. And, and then you got all these people capitalizing on all this shit and over-exaggerating it and everything else all over online, and as well as, like, everybody knows mainstream media capitalizes on all that shit and has for years. So, I mean, and that's just scratching the surface. So I've been spending a lot of time lately just observing what's the official story that we're being told here about Israel and Iran and P. Diddy and what's the official story? They're talking about weather weapons, and I mean, it's just like bizarro world out here, man. And so I've been observing a lot of this lately. I've been consuming a lot of the official story, the official narrative, and it's like, what's next? Is 7-headed dragons coming out of the fucking ocean? It's like, what the fuck is this shit, man? But then I look at my life, and I'm not complaining at all. But like, how does any of this impact me? Like, it really doesn't. It really doesn't. And so. And also, as I previously mentioned, I have a hard enough time just keeping track of what the fuck's going on with me, let alone what's going on in fucking Israel and North Carolina and fucking P. Diddy and all these corrupt actors and all these corrupt stars and all these corrupt politicians and all this corruption everywhere and everything. I can't even keep track of what's going on with me, let alone what is going on around the world. I mean, it's even crazier. There's some things that YouTube won't even let me mention, even if I'm just mentioning from a neutral standpoint, about the health industry and the common cold and medicine and stuff. It's like there's some really insane shit going on. And so anyways, but yeah, no, my point of my video is I'm not trying to tell anybody what their views should be politically or otherwise. And I will continue to reiterate this. I have friends that are liberals and shit, and we're still friends, man. And some of my friends that are liberals, we can go into depth into our differences on politics without arguing and yelling at each other and pulling out guns on each other. And still be close friends, it's like no problem, because so anyways, whatever. So I just don't want to get people to necessarily get the wrong impression. At the same time, though, I do feel it it is kind of important, it can be, to express my views, like why I view the way I do. And I'll end it with this, I guess, even though I probably get me in trouble, is poverty. Look at poverty in relation to everything. No matter what the subject is, I guarantee you it's directly tied to it. You could be talking about Illuminati, you could be talking about reptilians, you could be talking about any and all this hot, sexy flavor of the day and flavor of the week and flavor of the month shit. Look at it from the poverty aspect of it. Like, how is poverty tied into all this? And I guarantee you it is directly tied to all of it. And doesn't it seem odd to you that even though it's directly tied to these sexy subjects, that it is conspicuously absent from the entire discussion? And you'll have these massive discussions on these popular subjects and topics. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And politics is just one of them. That's one of the reasons I like politics. Like, that's why I said with the Gandhi thing, you can, whatever your viewpoint on politics, even if it's apolitical. Well, let's look at the apolitical. You can measure the apolitical movement based on how it treats its poor. How do apolitical people treat the poor? The same as liberals and the same as conservatives? Well, then how is the apolitical stance any different than the liberal or the conservative? It's not. That's what makes the apolitical stance a political stance. The apolitical, how does the apolitical, this massive, so-called massive group of apolitical that are against all politics because it's two wings of the same bird and all this shit. Well, how did those people treat the poor? The same as the liberals do. And the same as the conservatives do. Well, why would I want to be apolitical when you treat the poor the same as the liberals treat the poor? And you treat them the same as the conservatives treat the poor. But then you're trying to tell me that you're somehow, apolitical group is somehow different than the liberals and the conservatives. It's not. It is exact identical thing. And an apolitical person will start arguing how, no, that's not true. That's not true, even though, yes, you might be right about how they treat the poor, but then what about, think about this and that and the other thing? It's like, well, I'm not going to think about that if you're not going to think about how the apolitical treat the poor. And the apolitical treat the poor exactly identical as the liberal people treat the poor, which is exactly identical to how the conservative people treat the poor. And yet, poverty is supposed to be just this big nothing burger, non-issue that I'm not supposed to be considering. I'm supposed to just ignore it, right? Like everybody else does. Well, I'm not like everybody else, and I have no interest in being like everybody else. And the apolitical stance is just like every other one. They ignore the poor. Fucking Gandhi was right. Whatever you think about Gandhi, maybe you're right, maybe you're wrong, I don't know. Whatever you think about Gandhi, what he said is true. You can measure a society, no matter what kind of society it is, you can measure it by how it treats its poor. Look at the apolitical society. How do they treat the poor? Well, they treat them exactly the same as the liberal society does and the conservative society. Well, how are they any different? They're not. Oh, and then they'll try to list all the, well, no, they're different because of this and that and the other thing. It's like, dude, well, if I'm poor, then you're no different to me than anyone else. You're all the same to me, you know. You're no different. So I'm not buying into your bullshit any more than I am the liberals or the conservatives. I don't care. I might just go vote out of spite of how the apolitical treat the poor. How about that? You know. And but it's just very interesting. Anyways, I'll leave it at that.